Isawati and her son Ardianto have been living in the coast of North Jakarta almost all of their lives. Isawati grew up in this house where her family lived for more than 40 years, but now her home is at risk of disappearing. Jakarta, a sprawling metropolis and one of the most densely populated cities in the world, could virtually be wiped off the map in the next 30 years. The finding by Bandung Institute of Technology showed that the city is already sinking at least 15 centimeters per year. North Jakarta is especially vulnerable to this phenomenon. Researchers say more than 95% of the north could be underwater by 2050. It's a grim prediction for Isawati. Over time, her family has witnessed massive changes. It's evident in her corner shop, which has sunk several meters below sea level over the past 20 years. High tides and the rainy season affect them the most. The family frequently has to pack up their provisions on sale and take shelter in their living quarters for safety, sometimes for days. That affects their income heavily.
Kata mama saya sih, pertama tinggal di sini itu tanggul sama laut misi ketanggul daratan sama laut misi tinggian daratan. Jadi semakin ke sini mungkin ya banyak bangun gedung-gedung kali ya. Jadi semakin turun juga tanah, semakin turun sampai segini. Ini udah perbaikan berapa kali tanggul. Diganti terus, lama-lama maju ke depan, tadinya dia jalan lebar di sini.
Those cracks are attributed to the shifting of the grounds. At first glance, it's impossible to tell that their house sits below sea level. But North Jakarta has sunk 2.5 meters in the past 10 years alone. That's more than double what experts predicted. In 2007, Jakarta experienced one of the worst and devastating floods it has ever seen. A strong storm, high tides, and a failed water pump caused many rivers and canals across the city to overflow, pushing a wall of water from North Jakarta into the capital. Muddy, polluted water reaching as high as 4 meters inundated nearly half of the city, forcing hundreds of thousands of people out of their homes. As many as 500,000 residents were left without fresh water and electricity for weeks. At least 76 people were killed, and the cost of the damage reached $600 million. Isawati's family was one of those affected. After months of torrential rains, they fell victim to the floods.
Ini banjirnya kecil dulu dari sono, awalnya dari sono. Kecil dulu. Nggak lama tuh, terus langsung jeduk, jeder, biar gitu, kayak tsunami. Jadi bapaknya itu kan di situ lagi mau nutup warung gitu ya. Mau nutup warung, terus ke bawah arus, ininya juga terbalik habis-habisan warung. Habis-habisan total. Sedangkan duit ada 10 juta. Terus KTP, STNK, solar, bensin, pokoknya harta benda saya nggak ada yang ketinggalan. Sedangkan bapaknya itu tergulung-gulung air, ininya patah nih.
Till today, that trauma remains. Her husband suffered serious injuries as the flash floods gushed through this area. It took Isawati months to return to Jakarta, only to find her home in rubble. Eventually, her family and the community around her came together and helped each other out. For them, whatever happens, this is home. Floods are a yearly occurrence in Jakarta, frequently bringing damage and devastation in its wake. It's a problem that the government has yet to get a grip on. The sinking phenomenon is due to several factors. One of the major ones is extraction of groundwater. The entire city of Jakarta sits on a swampy land. In the north, the soil is softer, the ground is looser, and not as densely packed compared to the rest of the city. It's still in the process of being consolidated because of the area's natural geologic movements. Peter Letitre, a groundwater expert at the Dutch Institute Deltarès, has been studying the problems plaguing the coast of Jakarta. Deltarès also assists the Jakarta city government in coming up with solutions before the city sinks entirely.
If we calculate the costs of the floods, it is massive and it will increase every year. That's why we have to take measures like raising the dikes, but the costs will increase if we don't stop subsidence. So actually the stopping of subsidence and the provision of water supply would be the cheapest solution for all these problems in combination with raising the dikes. But yeah, it is a massive challenge to do it, and it will take time.
But the dikes are only meant to be temporary. The only long-term solution is to build a dam that will lower water levels so that the rivers can continue to flow and stream naturally. Although it's most prominent in the north, the rest of Jakarta is sinking too, even though at a slower rate. The report states that the ground in West Jakarta is sinking by as much as 15 centimeters annually. In the east by 10 centimeters and up to 2 centimeters in central Jakarta.
This particular area where I'm at right now is the center of Jakarta. This is the icon of the city. You can see I'm surrounded by office buildings, large shopping malls, and 5-star hotels. But scientists say at least 5,000 years ago, this area was a blue space, which basically means it was entirely covered with water. Even today, research has found that many of the buildings here have their own groundwater pump, and they're extracting water without permission or a license.
The only way to prevent the city from sinking is to stop all groundwater extraction and fully rely on other sources of water, such as rainwater or piped water from man-made reservoirs. But since piped water is expensive and unreliable, many building owners here are forced to pump water from aquifers. Excessively doing this causes the land above it to sink, leading to land subsidence, where rock and sediment stack on top of each other.
Land subsidence is quite critical. This is the major driver of flood, of also influencing in now the government has already entered and doing what they call the no regret phase, is that they building dike along the coastline, 120 kilometers long, from Cilincing up to Kamal, something around there, And this is shared by the central government. They are building about 30 or 40 kilometers, I don't remember it quite well. And also the provincial government of Jakarta also built that. And the rest will be shared by some private parties or whoever who has some stake on the coastal line. So then this is the no regret phase in order to protect Jakarta from being inundated from the sea,
Groundwater extraction is the only factor that government can put a stop to. If sinking continues at the current rate, Dr. John estimates that this coastal dike can only last until 2030. Anytime after that, the city would have to create another layer of protection in the forms of building offshore dikes and seawalls. And that's exactly what they're preparing to do. After years of suspension, the Indonesian government agreed to resume land reclamation that will help prevent Jakarta from sinking further below sea level. The first stage of the construction process of the giant seawall is aimed at restoring the crumbling flood canal system.
Our group's concept and proposition is that when in the spatial planning of Jakarta 2030, they have already so-called 66 polders. So these 66 polders should be realized, because the polder can accommodate the huge amount of water. Then by having that polder also, we hopefully also, we can have some provision of fresh water, but also hopefully also the land subsidence also at least will reduce in terms of the ongoing processes.
If we look back at the history of Jakarta, thousands of years ago, the city was only meant to have a population of around 800,000 people. When residents of that time moved out of coastal areas and into the city centers, that's what Jakarta's previous colonial government envisioned it to be. But after the country's independence in 1945, the population of Jakarta rapidly increased. Many people from neighboring cities started to move into the capital. And that created a surge of almost 5 times more than what the government prepared for. Areas that were deemed unsuitable for living suddenly became a hub for property developers. Shopping malls, luxury apartments, and exclusive homes were built in a span of a few years.
I think they realize what is the problem, but many private developers that are still building high-rise buildings, making use of groundwater resources, are still not getting the point. And they have to be made aware also about this issue, because it will affect their investments also.
Living by the coast of North Jakarta is a risk well understood by its residents. However, development and life continues undeterred in the area. The dike protecting locals from the ever-present threat of floods is improved and raised with every new disaster, giving them extra time to adapt and adjust to changes in their land and water.
Tawaran-tawaran pemerintah terhadap persoalan yang dialami oleh orang di utara Jakarta itu tawaran yang yang sifatnya tambal sulam, bukan sifatnya serius. Misalnya tentang pemipaan air di utara Jakarta, itu orang-orang miskin ya di utara Jakarta tuh membayar air lebih mahal daripada orang di selatan, di kawasan yang paling elit, misalnya di Pondok Indah seperti itu. Kita bisa bayangkan bahwa mereka untuk mandi saja bisa menghabiskan uang 30.000 satu hari. Untuk MCK bayangkan mereka harus menambah berapa.
The price of water adds up for the poorer residents along North Jakarta's coast. Most of the time, Isawati is forced to buy water. For those who make a meager income and live in near poverty, the price of $7 for water is a struggle. That amount usually only lasts them 1 week. Her son, Ardianto, is aware that their community and his family's home are going through dramatic changes, but he is not willing to be uprooted.
Jangan sampai ada penggusuran ya. Soalnya kita di sini juga udah lama juga sih, udah seperti kampung halaman sendiri. Kita nyari duit juga di sini, kalau bisa sih jangan ada penggusuran. Kalau mau dibikin tanggul untuk masyarakat ya silakan dibikin aja.
Experts say this phenomenon has become more than just a technical issue. It is now a social issue and needs to be addressed.
If we look at the costs of doing nothing, we have to realize that the north of Jakarta has 4 to 5 million people. Doing nothing would mean that we have to evacuate all these people by the coming years and decades. We have a total invested value in North Jakarta of more than $250 billion. So you're not going to give up such economic asset and the space for so many people to live.
Indonesia has recently committed to achieving their Sustainable Development Goals, otherwise known as the UN 2030 Agenda. It's a universal call to action to improve life on land, below water, and enhance cities, communities, and economic growth. The latest attempt at finding a long-term solution promises to involve everyone affected, from Isawati and her neighbors, fishermen who depend on the sea for a living, to residents who have called the area home for decades, as well as factories and businesses that are rooted in North Jakarta. The rapidly approaching deadline, the rate at which the city continues to sink, as well as the continuous urbanization of Jakarta makes this an uphill challenge. Not impossible, experts say, as long as everyone works towards the single goal of stopping the megalopolitan from disappearing into the ground. And of course, to save families like Isawati's from forced evacuations and displacements.